Prime Minister Modi kick-started a debate on REVARIS or freebie culture last month. He's now reiterated that freebies are a burden on taxpayers. Only recently, the RBI too flagged the rising debt burden of various states. The matter has reached Supreme Court, and this is where things get even more interesting. Petitioner Ashwini Upadhyay requested the apex court to derecognize political parties that promise freebies. The CJI was not impressed and refused to entertain this as part of the plea. But the court also observed that financial discipline is absolutely necessary. Not surprisingly, Aam Aadmi Party leader Arvind Kejriwal today raised doubts on the centre's finances and questioned where the money is going. Our netas indulging in a political slugfest on an extremely sensitive issue, which is our economy. Bigger question, are all political parties not guilty of giving out freebies? And what exactly is a freebie? How do you distinguish between a freebie and necessary welfare schemes? ET now decodes how each paisa is spent by the government, and you can decide what is best for the country. But let me first, before I go to my panel of experts, listen in to some of those political reactions coming in today.
राजनीति में ही स्वार्थ होगा तो कोई भी आकर पेट्रोल डीजल भी मुफ्त देने की घोषणा कर सकता है। ऐसे कदम हमारे बच्चों से उनका हक छीनेंगे, देश को आत्मनिर्भर बनने से रोकेंगे। ऐसी स्वार्थ भरी नीतियों से देश के ईमानदार टैक्स पेयर का बोझ भी बढ़ता ही जाएगा। अपने राजनीतिक स्वार्थ के लिए ऐसी घोषणाएं करने वाले कभी नई टेक्नोलॉजी पर निवेश नहीं करेंगे।
जनता को फ्री में मिलने वाली सुविधाओं का विरोध किया जा रहा है, जिस जबरदस्त तरीके से विरोध किया जा रहा है। कहा जा रहा है कि अगर सरकारें जनता को फ्री में सुविधाएं देगी तो सरकारें कंगाल हो जाएंगी, देश के लिए बहुत आफत पैदा हो जाएगी, इन सारी फ्री की सुविधाओं को बंद किया जाए। इससे एक मन में शक पैदा होता है कि क्या केंद्र सरकार की आर्थिक हालत बहुत ज़्यादा कहीं ख़राब तो नहीं हो गई है। इतना ज़बरदस्त तरीके से विरोध क्यों किया जा रहा है। पिछले 70-75 साल से सरकारी स्कूलों के अंदर फ्री में शिक्षा मिलती आई है। पिछले 70-75 साल से सरकारी अस्पतालों में गरीबों को फ्री दवाइयाँ मिलती हैं, फ्री राशन हर महीने भेजा जाता है। अचानक ऐसा क्या हो गया कि इन सारी चीज़ों को बंद करने की, इन सारी चीज़ों को वापस लेने की, इन सारी चीज़ों के खिलाफ इतना ज़बरदस्त विरोध क्यों पैदा हो गया। केंद्र सरकार की आर्थिक हालत ठीक तो है।
So with the AAP government taking the issue of freebies in the Supreme Court, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has come down heavily on the issue and has said that no government has ever kept health and education steps amongst the freebies. And health and education, they do need government intervention despite private sector investment, because these are two sectors in which heavy investment is definitely required by the government. In fact, the Finance Minister has also said that AAP is trying to give a perverse twist to the freebies issue. She said that government definitely wants a big debate on this entire freebies issues. In fact, sources are also telling us that electricity, which AAP has promised amongst the freebies in some states, it should be putting it in their own budget rather than putting all the burden on the generating companies and the distribution companies, which increases their debt burden. So that is also one of the freebies that is usually given, electricity. The sources are also saying that if the farmers do need electricity as a freebie, then they should be given freebie. There is no harm in going ahead and giving it to them. But health and education, the Finance Minister has said, no government, and the current government also has never said that it should be counted as a freebie. And a big debate is definitely what the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman wants on the entire freebies issue.
All right, so that's the big debate which is yet to happen politically. But meanwhile, we debate what freebies really are And are they necessary, in fact? Swaminathan Aiyar, consulting editor, ET Now, joining us on the show. R. Gopalan, former Secretary, Ministry of Finance, with us this evening. And Sanjay, Hegde, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, also joining us. Welcome to all of you. Swami, let me begin with the question to you. Is there merit in this argument that freebies will end up hurting the economy?
Well, the first question is, how do you define freebies and what are we talking about? There are a large number of expenditures that the government makes without charging people. And I said, the Prime Minister referred to something called saying REVARIS, meaning these are things that are just being given away to some people without merit. And that those kind of remedies, if you spend too much money on that, there is not enough left for good causes. On the other hand, there are various other things that are free, which I would call jalebis, which we need. We need high quality education free of charge in the villages. We need high quality primary health. We need high quality public health, preventive health, which prevents diseases. So, there are a large number of jalebis along with the remedies. Now, what is true is that there are some expenditures which I am dead against. For instance, if you're giving free electricity to farmers, this is a terrible thing. It is resulting in the destruction of the aquifers. It is resulting in the bankruptcy, certainly of the Punjab government. It has been a serious problem. It means that we are over pumping. We are growing the wrong kind of water intensive crops instead of the appropriate crops. A series of wrong things. The free electricity is a bad thing. Again, if you say highly subsidized urea at 1/3 the world price, when you start doing that, that is highly subsidized, but the other phosphatic and potassic fertilizers are not. Therefore, farmers use too much of urea, not enough of the others, and this spoils the soil. On top of that, a lot of this highly subsidized urea is being smuggled across into Bangladesh and Nepal or being diverted to chemical industries. So these are the really bad freebies that you should not have. There are some other freebies like PM Kisan. Should you be giving money to all farmers? I would say no. What is special about farmers? If you like, give it to everybody. I mean, if you see what Mr. Naveen Patnaik has done in Orissa, he has said in rural areas, it will go to all people, whether they are farmers, tenants, landless labor, other kinds of people. So if you give it to all of them, that to me makes sense. If you only give it to farmers, that I would call a freebie, that is unwarranted. But broadly speaking, in every democracy, there are powerful lobbies who demand favors, and they get those favors because politicians want to cater to those vote banks. So that, I'm afraid, is a fundamental flaw you do get in democracies. And this is why you had the former president of the European Commission, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, made this famous statement: we all know what is to be done. What we don't know is how to get re-elected after doing it. And because they don't know how to get re-elected after doing it, they continue with freebies that are not good in the long run.
Sanjay Hegde, this Revdi versus Jalebi, and only Swami can put it in such a simple to understand way. My question is, how do you distinguish between Revdi and Jalebi, and look at the political debate about it? One side's Revdi can be someone else's Jalebi. My freebie is welfare. Your freebie is a bad thing. So how do you really look at this dispassionately without the politics?
See, you can't really distinguish. As you said, one man's Revdi is another man's Jalebi. Because now let's assume that there is a government which promises everybody a mixer. Quite apart from the people who get the mixer manufacturers are also benefited. And this thing can go on and on. There are others who also say that, look, why do you resent what the common man gets if it's rice at 2 rupees a kg, when your industrialists get those thousands of crores written off through the IBC and other things like that? Is that kind of write-off also being financed through the electoral bonds? The question before the court was more focused. It was, what kind of freebies should you be banned from promising as something in exchange for a vote? nearer the elections, what kind of freebies can you not offer? It's a very good thing if a politician says, look, I'm going to improve the public health in the place, or I'm going to improve public education in a place. Yeah, there have also been politicians like the late N.T. Ramarao, who once won the 1983 Andhra elections by promising 2 rupees of rice to everyone. So there are promises which have a component of subsidy. There are promises for free stuff. Not everything is a freebie. Some part of it can be good economics also. Right now in the contest for the British Prime Minister, both candidates are pitching their various tax cuts and their various benefits also that they're promising voters. So each politician comes in promising benefits. The question is who is to pay, and also should courts be getting into defining it? That, I think, is really a question of judicially manageable standards. And I don't think that there are...
Hegde, isn't that the issue? Who will define it? Who will define it?
Absolutely. And who will then implement it? If courts were to define it, then each transgression would end up back in the courts. So the courts would then have to expand only into looking into freebies and not do their normal work. Right now, it's a good thing that we are debating it. And one last thing that I'd like to say is that the origin of the phrase revdi comes from that Hindi phrase "Anda baate revdi, mud mud apno ko de." That is, when revdis are distributed, they're distributed selectively. I think that's where the problem really lies.
I just want to understand the current context of that debate, because revdi/freebie was never considered a bad thing. It's been part of the Indian democratic process, electoral process since time immemorial. How and why is it suddenly being looked at as a problem? Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, that question's for you.
Yeah. See, I don't know the politics behind it, but right now it was a BJP politician who petitioned the court. He files a lot of petitions over a lot of issues. And this is an issue which has struck some favor with the current bench, which is hearing it. And curiously enough, the Prime Minister has also spoken about it, and other politicians have started jumping in. We are a welfare state. Providing public welfare is part of every politician's job description. Now, whether you link it with voting for you, saying that here is a mixer, go vote for me, that would be obvious bribery. But if you say that I will create economic conditions where every house will have electricity, every house will have a mixer and a television, then that would be probably good economics and good politics. So there is definitely a definitional question, and there is also a question of implementation as to who is to administer any definitions that people come up with.
Gopalan, how do you see the current debate on freebies, where suddenly these have become a bad thing? The point I made to Sanjay Hegde, this after being a favored political tool by all parties to garner votes. What's changed now?
See, I would say that, this debate has come about because the finances, the fiscal position of various state governments have become very, very difficult. The borrowings, the debt levels of these state governments are very high. The interest payment on them is becoming very big, and they are left with much less money for various capital expenditures and other important expenditures relating to health and education. So that's the reason this debate has really come up in a very, very big way. All political parties over a period of time have really taken advantage of the freebies, looking at electricity, free electricity for agriculture. Of course, that has got some merits in it. Writing off, agricultural loans and providing freebies in Mangal Sutra, then so many other things which are, somebody may call it social, but somebody may say that is, we are now only giving people everything from cradle to grave. We are supporting people in their livelihood, giving them little incentive to eke a livelihood on their own. So this is the level to which this debate has, come down to. Actually, I would think that, there are certain things which are required to be done because they have a lot of externalities which will serve the population in a very, very big way. For instance, education, health, and other public goods like, water supply and sewerage, in my view, are really important things because of tremendous amount of externalities they have for the entire population. So I think that's an area where we should focus on. On all other things, what we should look at is what is the budget which the state government can, give for this kind of freebies. Take it as a percentage of revenue expenditure. The percentage of revenue expenditure should be the kind of freebies which government should think what they can do. But they should at the same time see how the growth has to take place in the state GSDP. Now, how that can be done over a period of time, what kind of growth it has got to look into, and if it is going to be for 14-15% increase in incomes, if it is going to be 10 to 11% of growth in GSDP terms, then what is the kind of investment they have got to make in what areas, and accordingly they should fine-tune their ability to give freebies and should take a decision in the legislature as to how they should pin down that expenditure to a particular percentage and don't go beyond that. That's the way, in my view, practically, administratively, this can happen. The question of looking into freebies and how to ensure that they are not allowed to rise beyond significant levels. That is something that's a way to go forward.
You know, the question again is who will do it and who will decide what's a freebie? Swami, you talked about reverie and jalebi, and I bring that question to you. Is it the Supreme Court, the Election Commission, or political parties? Who decide what's a jalebi and what's a reverie?
Let us face it. This is fairly and squarely something in the political arena to be decided by political parties and voters. This is not a thing for the judiciary to get into. It is not a thing for the Election Commission. It is not a thing for some committee of technocrats. I mean, all those people can have their views on the matter. But ultimately, this is about the fundamental functioning of government, of we raise money, whom do we tax, we subsidize or help in various ways. So this has to be done through the political system, through politics, through convincing voters that we need to do this, we can't do that. Within this, some things that will happen that are very good. Money will flow to things that are good and appropriate. Within this also, unfortunately, some money will go to favored lobbies. And those favored lobbies don't always deserve what they're getting, like the farmers of the Northwest are getting various benefits through MSP, which is not available to farmers in the rest of India. So that clearly is a favor to one group of people, and that is a reverie. So, but at the end of it all, this cannot be resolved by some committee. It has to be done in the political arena. The political parties have to vie with each other and convince the voters which is appropriate, taking into account short-term and long-run consequences.
Sanjay, Hegde, that comes back to the point you were making, that is the courts the right forum to look at this? And if you leave it, say, to political parties or to parliament, why will they want to, put a cap on what they can promise before elections?
Well, politicians ultimately will need to set the rules of the game for themselves, because at the end of the day, in a healthy system where political parties come into power, come and go into opposition pretty frequently, then the thing of making very tall promises or promises that cannot be fulfilled will naturally have its own system of checks and balances. But right now, where there is where the voter tends to give a dominant vote to one party or the other, whether at the central level or at the state level, then you get all kinds of fantastic promises. You must remember that if we had a promise that, if black money came back, everybody would get 15 lakhs in their account. Was that a freebie? Was that a REVARIS? Was that a jalebi? We don't know. Or it actually was a pie in the sky. So yes, Swami is right that the population will, in its turn, punish politicians who make tall promises and do not deliver. The question is, can the politicians themselves come up with a regulatory scheme where these tall promises are eschewed on all sides? You must remember that the politicians themselves,
Sanjay, I want to,
they came in with the model code of conduct.
I want to point out the difference between tall/false promises and promises that economically hurt the country. Voters may not care whether there is a negative fiscal impact of that promise. They care that you promised something and you didn't give it. But that is not what is at question, is it? The question is the very act of making that promise before an election to quote unquote bribe the voter at the cost of ruining the economy.
See, that then again, if you're asking the courts to get into it, they're not designed for it, because these are economic decisions. And at the end of the day, we elect our governments to make economic decisions for the whole country. If they choose to favor one set of voters at the cost of the other voters, they will, the voters as well as the politician will learn the pain that comes in with promises that are extremely hard to keep.
Gopalan?
The remedy to be political. The remedy cannot be judicial. The remedy, I don't think, can be legislative.
Okay. R. Gopalan, let me bring that very tough question to you. Who will decide eventually what is a freebie and what is not? Who will implement it?
You see, this is something which the legislature of the states themselves should decide. Now, if there is if the state takes a view that this is the kind of freebies I am going to give to, this will be certain percentage of revenue expenditure, not more than that. 1%, 2% of revenue expenditure, 10% of revenue expenditure, not more than that. I am going to give by way of freebies. Now, despite the kind of promises the political parties can then make, they are stymied from executing many of them because there is a limitation placed by legislature on what they can spend. That is the way in which this kind of an attempt to spend money, spend on freebies can be reduced. Otherwise, you can say that the court, in what sense court is a representative of the people? Then in what sense the political parties are, having the real interest of the state and of the people totally in mind when they are seeking votes for election. So these are all difficult, things for, us to really understand that they will be doing justice to the whole requirements of the people. And therefore, the best way to go through is through legislature.
It's an interesting debate. And frankly, it's deeper than the political debate that it has been reduced to right now, about which party is doing the right thing and which is not. Is electricity up to 300 units a freebie or not? Is healthcare, mohalla clinic, education a freebie or not? It needs to be thought of in a wider ambit than the narrow political prism we're seeing in right now. Thank you so much, Sanjay, Hegde, Swaminathan Aiyar, and of course R. Gopalan for joining us on the discussion today.